Digital calendars are my accountability partner, and I love them because without them, I would be lost. I would not be living a life of balance. Certain areas in my life would get neglected. I wouldn't fall through on things that I know are important to me. And ultimately, I would be just constantly trying to figure out when to do what. The calendar has been my saving grace for the last 8 years, and I would not be who I am today or where I am if I did not have a digital calendar. And I'm going to get into that today. So let's think of it like this. In a given day, there's 24 hours. We all know that. There's 1,440 minutes. And ultimately, it's my responsibility on how I choose to spend that time, right? Now, I can already hear pushback of, well, I work a full-time job, for some scenarios and people. It doesn't matter the context, okay? Let's get rid of the excuses and let's just accept the reality that it is on us to choose how we spend our time. Because I think like this, because I view time like this, I've been able to map out my life aligned with my goals, my values, my interests, etc., into my calendar. It is baked into my calendar. So I don't have to think about when I'm doing these things. And that's how it served as my accountability partner. So when did I start actually using them? I think the story of how I got to this point is really important, which was I was driving Uber full time and I was building my first podcast. The year is 2016. And the only reason I'm really using a calendar is to schedule in podcasts with people that are going to come to my apartment in Boston, and we're going to sit in my bedroom studio and we're going to have a podcast. But I learned to send them a calendar invite so that I knew it was on their calendar. It was on my calendar. They had the address. I put a couple bullets in the description of what to expect, and then they would come through and we would have that podcast. Other than that, that's kind of all I use my calendar for, because if I wasn't driving Uber, I was either recording the podcast in the morning, sending emails in the morning, or doing my fitness in the morning. So my life was literally podcast, Uber, prioritize my self-care, repeat over and over and over. And eventually that built with time. Eventually I would go on to work at Liquid IV full-time. That helped me be even more accountable with my calendar, not only from a business stance, but then also creating work-life balance for myself. And then fast forward to January of this year, when I left my full-time gig and went all into myself, I had to be really intentional with how I was spending my time. And thankfully, I had spent so many years getting so disciplined to using a digital calendar as my accountability partner that when I left, nothing really changed. That first Monday working for myself, it was like every other Monday before. Woke up at the same time, worked out, started working at the same time, stopped working at the same time. I just had to figure out the gaps in between with all this extra time to work on my business. So it really started from a place of I just am booking podcasts and that's it, to then I'm going to build out my entire life onto my calendar so that I can make sure not a single thing is getting neglected. What have been some of the benefits of using one? 4 that I can think of. Number 1 is I have clarity on when to do what. There is so much peace of mind knowing when I woke up this morning, at the time of this, it's Monday and I'm recording this on July 22nd, okay? I woke up knowing I'm waking up at 6 a.m. I'm going to walk and feed the dogs. I'm then going to meditate. I'm then going to go to the gym. I'm then going to start work or come back, shower, have breakfast, start work by 10 a.m., work through till about 5 p.m. There's a lot of stuff in between that I'm not going to dive into with what the day looked like. And then, for the rest of the evening, I have a couple personal things I need to do around the house, etc. There's so much peace in that because it's mapped out on my calendar and I know when to do what. And I also am making sure that both personal and professional parts of my life are being prioritized in today. Number 2 is I'm held accountable to do what is on my calendar. Because I map out my priorities, my goals, my interests, etc. into my calendar, there's no way for me to hide, right? I could easily skip going to the gym this morning. But the one thing about me that has been so true throughout my entire childhood too is I'm my own biggest critic. And what I mean by that is if I don't go to the gym, no one's going to call me out. No one's going to be like, Bobby, why don't you go to the gym? But in my mind, it is going to tear me apart. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to get obsessed about it, and it's going to drive me nuts. So ultimately, I have to follow through and do the things that are on my calendar because I know that I can't hide from myself. And so it holds me accountable to following through on those things. Number 3 is I can plan out my day, week, month ahead of time. This is so important because I can put things on my calendar in advance so I know when to do them. Example being, I have recurring calls with friends on my calendar. I can plan out vacations ahead of time on my calendar. So, for example, I'm going to London in October. And yes, that's 3 months away. What does that really matter? Well, it helps me be extremely mindful and strategic leading up to that trip so I'm not taking on projects or opportunities that are going to either be during that trip or if I can't fulfill it before or after that trip. So I can be really intentional with how I'm structuring and designing my life via day, week, and month, or even year, because I'm building it into my calendar. And when I say year, immediately triggered, like I'm literally planning a wedding of July of next year for myself and my fiance. And just knowing that I can put that on my calendar means that July of next year, there's literally nothing that I'm going to be booking for business, for personal, except for this. So it gives me peace of mind knowing that I can plan accordingly. And the number 4 is I have inner peace because I'm on track. It feels like chaos and it feels just like so many decisions to be made if I don't have the calendar. When am I going to work out? When am I going to start working? When am I going to have time for my partner, fiance, Caitlin? When am I going to have time to do this? When am I going to have time to do that? Et cetera. It becomes so much chaos. So because my life is mapped out onto this digital calendar, not only is it creating accountability to do these things, but also it gives me peace because every day I'm just following one foot in front of the other, the things on my calendar, and that's it. And it feels incredible. How do I know where to place what on my calendar? Now, this is where it becomes a game of testing and trying. And I've learned over the years of what works for me and what doesn't work. So at a high level, I know that Monday through Friday, I'm not going to book anything on my calendar from 6 a.m. till probably around 10 a.m. because that's me time. That's my self-care time. That's my time to run, to work out, to meditate, to go to a local run club, to go for a walk with Kate, etc. It's my time. It's just not going to get booked. Then I know from 10 a.m. till about 5 p.m. is my working time during the week. That is when I will work on podcasts like this. I will make TikTok and Instagram videos. I will have coaching calls, brand partnership calls, etc. I know between this window is when I do that. And then 5 p.m. through the rest of the night till about 10 p.m. when I go to sleep, this is personal time. This could be, grabbing dinner with friends. It could be going for a walk, watching TV, relaxing, reading, etc. Because I know just those 3 buckets, the 6 to 10, the 10 to 5, the 5 to 10, I can be intentional about what I'm putting onto my calendar and where. So, for example, if I'm going to take a tennis lesson, that's more of like a hobby for me. I wouldn't really count that as like part of my fitness lifestyle. I know that I'm going to try to do that on the weekends, on Saturday or Sunday, because my weekday, it's just blocked. And most of these tennis lessons are happening in the early morning. And if I'm going to do dinner with friends, I'm going to try to find time during the week past 5 p.m. instead of doing like a lunch meetup with them in the middle of the week. It doesn't work because that's when I know I'm focused on my business stuff. And I try not to make exceptions. Very rarely will I ever allow that to happen. So it helps me know where to put what on my calendar because I have these blocks of time. And because I have these blocks of time, it also holds me accountable for not caving to overworking myself to burnout. Because I know I have a hard stop at 5 p.m. and now it's time to switch gears into my personal life. How flexible is my calendar planning and how do I adapt to changing priorities? So the way I view calendars is it's just giving me guardrails. It's just a structure for me to follow. But do I follow it to the minute every single day? No. It's just giving me clarity on when I should do what. Now, there's always going to be exceptions. There are going to be things that just kind of pop up, and I'll use an example. Friday, I explained how my mornings go. Usually 6 to 10, personal, 10, and then on, and I work. We had a slight change in Friday's plans. We had to grab coffee with a friend of ours that was in town and only could grab coffee Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. Then we had to bring our dog to the vet for 10:30. Then we had to do some personal stuff, running around, which means we didn't get back here till 1. That's the one Friday or the one day of the week that will have been adjusted, maybe the one and only in 30 days. And that's okay. I recognize that things inevitably happen. Priorities need to be shifted. And when that happens, that just means I move things around. So this podcast was supposed to be recorded on Friday. The short form content I'm going to create and post today was supposed to be done on Friday. And it's okay. We just shifted it to Monday. We had to reassess our priorities, and it's all good. So I just allow myself to adapt in real time, and I don't beat myself up. I would, however, beat myself up if this was reoccurring. If every day I found excuses to push things off, to make exceptions in my calendar, then we would have a problem. But because it's very rarely and I just allow it to happen when necessary, it's all good. Do I have a strategy for rescheduling canceled meetings or tasks? So if someone cancels a meeting with me, I tend to, in the moment, figure out when's the next time that we can chat so we can just problem solve that immediately. If it's task-wise, it's just like I just explained. Friday, the 2 tasks that I needed to do, record this pod and create a short form content, it got pushed to Monday. I had some positive thinking that I was going to find time to work on Sunday to do it, and I did not, which I'm happy I didn't. I was spending the entire day doing personal things, so I just pushed it to Monday, and here we are. So I always just make those small adjustments in real time when necessary. Do I have a routine for reviewing and adjusting my calendar? If so, how often? Every Monday, I look at my calendar for the week, and I make sure everything is in alignment. Is there anything on my calendar that I just don't want to do, doesn't feel in alignment with me, or whatever the reason may be? I will look at it ahead of time. And the reason I do that is because goals, priorities, it all changes with time. So something that might have been booked in my calendar 6 weeks ago, I might come into that week and go, it just doesn't feel right. And usually by that Monday, I can tell whether I'm still aligned to do it or not. And if not, I can cancel it out and give that person that experience, that opportunity enough time in advance, like, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it. So I usually try to do that every Monday, look at the week in advance. Is there anything that doesn't feel in alignment? If yes, cancel it out, all good. The only time I'm looking more than 1 week out in advance is if I'm planning something further down the road. And then that way I will go into my calendar, lock it, and then I can assess based on what's also booked on my calendar at that time. What types of notifications and alerts do I find most helpful? I have found that I have tried it before where I would have the notifications on. So, before every meeting, I'd get, a 5-minute heads up, a 10-minute heads up, or before anything on my calendar, I would get a notification. I still get them. Problem is I keep my phone on do not disturb 24/7. That's right. 24/7. I have the phone on do not disturb because I want to be in control of the distraction. I don't want the notifications on my home screen. I don't want the text popping up. I don't want nothing on my screen. I want to have that choice of when I go into my phone and when I click into these things. So because of that, I don't see them. I will, however, because I use a Mac, see the notification of upcoming calls, and that is helpful, but I'm so obsessed with checking the calendar, not every minute, but the first thing I do when I sit down to start working, or even on the weekend, that Friday going into it, I'm very in tune with what is on my calendar and when I'm doing what. So I don't find that the notifications are necessary, but for some people, it's really helpful. How do I integrate both personal and professional commitments into a single calendar? Like I was saying earlier, I have kind of these blocks, these boundaries of I really only allow myself to work Monday through Friday between 10 and 5. I don't book anything really business related on the weekends. I try to do this with intention because it helps keep a really honest balance of work and personal life. So with that being said, what gives me fulfillment is when I look at a calendar or when I look at my calendar at a single day or week, and I see both personal and professional things mixed in. Now, you can get into the fine-tuned details of like changing the color and style of the calendar invite itself. I just like to keep it basic. I like to keep it simple. And so my calendar is just all one color, but I can tell just based on the time of day or the day of the week, if there's something on the calendar, I know whether it's personal or professional. So that's just kind of how I've built it both into a single calendar. I don't have two separate ones, and I think it works great for me. What are some of my favorite hacks or tricks for maximizing the effectiveness of my digital calendar? I can't say it enough. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. So because I have these set times of when I'm personal life, when I'm professional, it helps a lot. I chatted about this on last week's episode about how to, eliminate wasted time in between calls. And I have that built into my Calendly link where you can only book me from 2 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. So that's also a huge hack for me with effectiveness with my digital calendars. I know 2 to 5 on my calendar, I need to keep open or locked in only for calls. And then everything else outside of that is up for me. So I think boundaries have been really crucial for me. And like I said earlier, just re-looking at the calendar every week and asking myself what's in alignment and what's not and what needs to get removed. How do I use my digital calendar to minimize distractions and stay focused? So at any single moment, even as I record this podcast, there are millions of other things that I could be doing. Millions, right? The to-do list is never ending. But what has helped me so much with effectiveness and efficiency is being absolutely present in the task at hand. And when I say task, I'm not just talking the sexiness of business. I am talking about whatever is the priority and thing that I'm doing in that singular present moment. That's all I need to focus on. So when I'm in the gym this morning, the only thing I'm thinking about is the gym, the workout, the music I'm listening to. That's it. When I'm recording this podcast, the only thing I'm trying to think about is this podcast and bringing the most amount of value that I can to this episode. When I have dinner tonight with Kate, that's all I will be focused on is chatting with her, reflecting on the day, talking about other things, etc. So I think that has been huge with minimizing distractions and staying focused is just truly focusing in on the thing that I'm doing in that present moment. And because of that, not only does it help me stay present and make me more happy and fulfilled and get things done in a faster period of time, but I can do this because I have this peace of mind knowing everything else is mapped out. The reason I can just focus on this podcast and not think about the TikTok that I need to make later or answering the emails is like, it's on the calendar. I know I have time buffered in to do these things because it's baked into my calendar. It's holding me accountable. I don't have to start getting worried about it because I know I'm going to get to it later. So that's been really, really helpful. What platform do I use? This is not paid, but I got to give a shout out to Google Calendar. It has been my saving grace for the last 8 years, and what a beautiful software. So simple, so easy to use. It's on my iPhone. It's on my laptop. I love the cohesiveness to be able to click in on my phone, to drop things on my calendar on my laptop. It works like a charm. It doesn't have to be the one that you guys and gals use, but try it if you're looking for a new calendar. There are other ones out there. I trust that you can do the research if there is something out there more in alignment with you. What's the first step that you should take when setting up yours? So now it's your chance to set up a Google Cal or any calendar. What's the first step you need to do? I think really simply, think of it in these terms. And this is the way I chat with a lot of my clients is I want you to imagine the dream day or the dream life. What does that look and feel like? And I want you to build that into your life, okay? I want you to start being realistic and honest with yourself of if you consistently woke up at the same time, went to bed at the same time, worked out at the same time, what would your life look like? What time would you wake up? What time would you start working out? What time would you meditate? What time would you start working? What time would you have lunch? What time would you stop working? What time would you have dinner? What time would you, catch up with family? Think about that and start to build that into your calendar. Start to use the calendar as a way to hold you accountable for these things that are so important to your life. The health and wellness, the work stuff, the hobbies and interests, the relationships. When I hear there's not enough time in the day or the week, what I'm really hearing is I don't want to prioritize this. Because if you really wanted to prioritize it, you would find the time for it. And the way you find the time for these things that are important to you is by building it into your digital calendar. So my challenge for you is after this episode, when you have a moment, start mapping out what that dream day, week, month, life looks like for you and start to create that into your reality. And with that, you will find that the calendar will then become your best accountability partner at the cost of $0. Now that, my friends, is a bargain. If you enjoyed today's episode, please, please, please drop a review on whatever platform you're listening on, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, you name it. It really, really helps the show. So please drop a review. I can't say it enough. These episodes take a lot of time, energy, and attention, and I love creating them. And they're free. But the one thing that you guys and gals could do to help support the show is just drop a review. It goes a long way. So thank you for tuning in. I will see you guys and gals on the next one. It's the Bearded Man Podcast.